Time for a Vantage exclusive now. Last weekend, India secured a major win on the world stage, a successful G20 Summit with a joint statement that had 100% consensus. The negotiations went on into the wee hours. Many thought a joint declaration was impossible, but Indian diplomats made it happen. The question is how? How did India turn it around? We put this question to a key member of the Modi government who was in the thick of things, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. In an exclusive interview, he spoke to me about India's negotiation strategy, what other G20 members thought of India's presidency, and how it will impact India's bilateral negotiations, especially on trade. Also, is India open to investments from China, and why trade talks with Canada have been put on hold? We covered a lot of ground. Here's an excerpt from that conversation. Hello and welcome to this special interview. With me is Mr. Piyush Goyal, Union Minister of India, or should I say Bharat, sir. Welcome to Firstpost.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on your show, Palki ji.
It's an honor to have you. And let me start with a word of congratulations. India has just closed its G20 presidency on a high, at least the leaders' summit. And we had everyone, all sides agree to a joint statement. You have passed a cabinet resolution hailing the success of the G20. Are you satisfied with the outcomes?
It truly is very, very satisfying, very, very encouraging to see the trust that India during its G20 presidency has been able to earn from leaders across all sides of the fence. Very different viewpoints were on offer. It was a difficult time. Most people had given up hope on an outcome document. I think it was very deft handling on the part of the Honorable Prime Minister and the team which was working on it. And clearly a matter of great satisfaction that what we had set out to achieve when the presidency came to India, making it a people's G20, Jan Bhagidari, get everybody involved, get the nation feel connected to an important event like this, and come up with outcomes which demonstrate to the world that India cares for not only our 140 crore Indians, but for the entire world. I think that message has gone down very, very strongly from this presidency.
Yes, and like I was telling you, the Brazilian president, Brazil is the next chair, and they said they're taking lessons from India. You mentioned Jan Bhagidari. It truly was a people's event. And the people have one question in mind. How did you make it happen? You served as the G20 Sherpa in 2021. And while we see the decisions come out, we're all curious to know what goes into forging that consensus. How do you achieve something like this?
When we got the presidency on 1st of December last year, the situation was somewhat like what we hear of in the Charles Dickens book, A Tale of Two Cities. On the one hand, the times were good. On the other hand, the times were full of despair, difficult times. And the situation was challenging. We had barely come out of COVID. The war was still raging on. The East and the West were highly polarized, divided. And clearly, the G20 was addressing the challenges of a broken world order. At that point of time, for India to present such an ambitious agenda, which talked about the entire world coming together, which talked about the world addressing the needs of a long awaited better deal for the less developed countries, the developing countries, particularly in the global south. A world which was looking for inclusive and sustainable solutions, yet was conscious that it's a very, very different level of development that we see in different parts of the world, which means we have to be more accommodative, we have to try and come up with balanced and equitable solutions. So there were a lot of challenges, and in some sense, you get the best out of Prime Minister Modi when there is a challenge on hand. And we saw that happening in the G20. He led from the front. He was really on the front foot through the Indian G20 presidency.
How does the Delhi Declaration and the conversations you've had, especially over the past few days, how does it impact India's bilateral engagements with partners, especially on trade? Because we've seen a lot of focus on trade deals lately, and over the weekend we saw two in particular, the UK and Saudi Arabia. Which are the areas or regions we're focusing on to push for deals like these?
I think the biggest achievement of the entire G20 presidency has been trust. Bilateral trading arrangements or economic partnerships that we are pursuing with the UK, also with the EU, the 27-nation bloc of EU, who is our second largest trading partner after the United States. We also were in a dialogue with Canada, which for some time we are looking at to we've given it a pause to see how we need to take it forward going forward.
Why is that, if I may ask?
There are several reasons. We need to make sure that geopolitically and economically we are all on the same page. And therefore, the pause on the Canada discussions.
Are we not on the same page with Canada?
We are on good page, but we have had certain issues which are of serious concern. They have been highlighted in the bilateral meeting that the Honourable Prime Minister had with the Prime Minister of Canada. And we are hoping for resolution of some of these issues before we take it forward. So you will see that we have a very vast array of negotiations underway. In fact, most teams in the Commerce Ministry are actually doing two-shift working, a morning negotiation with one and another in the evening. And you really need to be very sharply focused on each negotiation because you are crystal gazing into 30, 40, 50 years into the future.
Is India open for business for Chinese investors?
Well, India is open for business for all investors across the world. We are fair to all countries. We would only like to make sure that we get reciprocal access, reciprocal benefits. We'd like to make sure that strategically India's interests are not compromised. And therefore, India is a little cautious when it comes to investments from all our land bordering countries, whether it's China or any other land bordering country. We are looking at a little more cautious, calibrated approach.
The world is looking at diversifying supply chains, and most international companies are adopting a policy of China plus one, which is seen as an opportunity for India. And at the same time, there are other players like Thailand and Vietnam. They offer similar deals, similar advantages. They're vying for the same market. What is India's strategy?
Frankly, China plus one is a very popular terminology. Then you have anything but China, then you have friendshoring and nearshoring. All of these have been in public domain for quite some time now. And I do recognize that India also benefits when people are looking for trusted partners, looking for rules-based, transparent economic systems where they feel confident that they, and safer also. No Indian businessman disappears in the middle of the night for months and then comes out as a professor. But I think today, and more particularly after this G20 presidency, India has changed the rules of the game. The narrative is now very much different. India on its own stream, India on its own legs, today goes from a position of strength with self-confidence and engages with the rest of the world, invites investments, invites businesses to come and work in India. And I think it will no more be a diversification strategy. It will not necessarily be only about resilient supply chains. India will now become a compulsive destination. India will become the need of the hour. More and more companies are recognizing that the democracy, the demographic dividend, and the diversity, the 3 Ds that India offers, We have become an aspirational society, a young aspirational India which is going to drive and power India on its own stream. We will become the pole around which world economies will want to work and engage.
Thank you very much, sir, for taking all the questions and for all your time and for sharing your perspectives with us. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Palki ji.